get this started. Super excited to have everybody here today. Today, we're going to be talking about how you'll be able to resurrect your demand and get your pipeline back in order right now. Super excited today to have a great panel here with us. We have different members of people from Closed Loop, Blueshift, Lob, and as well as myself from Effin Amazing. So just to kind of start things out, I am going to take the slide down. I'll have everybody basically share their video so that way we can get everybody on board. And we'll stop sharing our screen right now to see if we can get everybody going. Oh, look at that. Awesome. And I would highly recommend while we're doing this is that everybody basically put this in their gallery view so you can see all four of the cameras at the same exact time and be able to actually see all of us going on. So just to start things out, so my name is Dan McGaw. I'll be your moderator for today's panel. Super excited to get this going. We have a really, really good group of marketers and as well as CEOs to be able to help us kind of push this forward and really understand how we're adapting to this market landscape and get everything going. I'll be handling all the questions and as well as the chat. So if you have questions during this, please put them in the Q&A and also in the chat system. We will be able to ask those questions, be able to get you the information you need. While we're going through this though, if something does happen, definitely we are going to record this. We will send out a copy of the recording for you to review later. We'll also be sending out some takeaways so that way everybody has that information. So if something happens, definitely know that we'll make sure that you get that information. So just to start things out, I'd love to turn it to Lance, who put this whole webinar and panel together. Lance is the CEO of Closed Loop, a very well-respected paid media consulting company and agency. Lance, how's your day going?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Dan. Really happy to be here. Grateful to be on the webinar. And just by way of quick introduction of myself and my company, as Dan said, I'm Lance Loveday, the CEO of Closed Loop, and we are a paid media agency. We specialize in helping companies realize massive profit, really, from paid channels, and that has never been more important than now. And I'll talk about what we're seeing across our client base, but the client base includes a number of B2B companies, as well as some B2C companies in a variety of different industries as well. And as I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot, the pain is not being spread evenly right now, and there are some winners amongst a sea of losers, sadly, in the current environment. Looking forward to sharing more about that.
Yeah, and thanks so much for putting this on. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to get everybody together for this. Really, really excited as well. So we also have Josh Francia from Blueshift, which is an amazing customer data platform. Josh, how's your day going?
It's going great. Yeah, I'm enjoying being quarantined with my 5 young children, like everyone else probably is enjoying the quarantines. But no, happy to be here with you guys and to talk about marketing and talk about some strategies. Just by introduction, I'm the Chief Growth Officer over at Blueshift. As Dan mentioned, we're a customer data activation platform. So we combine the first-party data into unique profiles, do a lot of AI to enrich that data and make it more interesting for you to act on. And then we bundle it all together with multi-channel activation, so allow you to actually send out those campaigns across multiple different channels. So excited to be here and answer your questions and talk more about marketing strategies.
No, it's awesome. And thanks so much for making the time. Definitely excited to hear your point of view in regards to all the things we have going on. And then our next esteemed panel is Michael Peach from Lob, which is one of my favorite companies out there right now. Do some really, really awesome stuff with your postcards and stuff through our automation. How's your day going as well?
I'm doing great, Dan, and thanks so much for having me on. Really looking forward to the conversation today, and thanks for the kind words about Lob. For those who may be unfamiliar with Lob or the service that we provide, we're an automated direct mail platform. And so specifically what that means is we allow direct mail to behave pretty much like email communications, and working with platforms like Blueshift and other marketing automation and CDP platforms, we allow customers to send personalized timed direct mail interactions out to their customers at very specific moments in the customer lifecycle.
No, and I'm a big fan of Lob as well. I've been using the platform for a long time to be able to send personalized postcards. So thanks so much for being able to provide the service. Just to finalize, I realized that I did not introduce myself really at all. I'm Dan McGaw. I'm the CEO founder of a marketing technology agency called Effin Amazing. We help a lot of companies with their marketing automation and as well as acquire customers and as well as retain them. So We help a lot of company pick tools, very similar to helping people figure out that Lob's the right fit or Blueshift's the right fit. And then as well as work with a lot of other agencies like Closed Loop to be able to ultimately convert as many of those people that they drive into the funnel. That being said, I don't want anybody to be scared of asking any questions during this. We do have some questions which were submitted earlier. And one of the things that I think is really important is as we're going through this shift of how we have to kind of adapt in this new world that we live in, I think every single day is a little bit different. But of course, there's things that have happened over the past 4 and 6 weeks that I think we all have kind of adjusted to a little bit. But I think one of the things that's really, really hard for us to all kind of grasp is this fact of like, hey, pipelines really change. So I guess just to kind of kick things off, one of the questions that I really have is kind of, what is the current state of affairs for your customers, or as well as what's going on inside of your businesses? I think, Michael, what I'd love to do is just kind of start with you. And what are the state of affairs that you're seeing in regards to things that are happening with your customers or even inside of your business when it comes down to generating pipeline?
So it's really interesting, sort of what we've seen for our customers. And I think, you know, it's important to sort of look at it by industry. There are some industries that have obviously felt a very immediate impact. And I think in that cases, they've definitely seen sort of pipeline really suffer. But I think in a lot of cases, other folks haven't. And I think there's almost kind of a timeline that aligns with about sort of the point in time that an individual state kind of went into shutdown and lockdown. And some of from what we saw is there's sort of a pattern of confusion of, you know, what's happening that causes a bunch of disruption and sees an initial drop in sort of response rates and pipeline. And then people sort of figure out, okay, this is how I'm going to work at home, and this is how I'm going to get, you know, deal with having kids at home, as you said, Josh. And then people get back to work and realize now they're stuck at home and they've got nothing to do, so they might as well do some more work. And I think, you know, certainly one of the things that we've seen is there was a very sort of abrupt circle of that where, you know, pipeline and marketing responses went down. And then as people sort of slowly got used to the hang of the new normal and the way the world was going, it actually started to come back up towards a normal curve. And I think for a lot of industries that haven't been sort of immediately impacted by some of the shutdowns, that's probably going to be a fairly consistent pattern.
Interesting. Josh, what about your perspective on this? I mean, I know that you have a little bit of a different view of the world at Blueshift.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I definitely think a vertical view is important, right? We all know that there's certain verticals that are getting hit very, very hard with this. Travel verticals, event planning verticals, all those verticals are getting hit really hard. And so those for sure have seen deceleration in a lot of things. However, you know, what we've noticed on the Blueshift platform is we've actually seen an increase in volume through the platform for the majority as a whole. And what we attribute that to is people are actually trying to lean into maybe lower cost marketing channels like email or mobile push and those types of things to drive revenue, especially in this time where there's such uncertainty. And so we've actually seen it go up consistently week over week as the coronavirus restrictions have been rolled out. So there's definitely, and there's actually even some parts of the economy that are actually seeing a boost, right? We work with several e-learning companies, and they've actually seen a huge uptick in people wanting their services. People are stuck at home. There's schools that are trying to figure out how to do, you know, e-learning and online training in classrooms and not really sure where to go. We have some food delivery customers, and they've obviously seen an uptick. Everyone kind of gets sick of maybe the home cooked meals after a while, and they want something different. So we definitely are seeing some upticks in some environments, but generally over the total, it looks like the volume is actually increasing quite a bit during this time where people are leaning into maybe these lower cost marketing channels.
I find it really fascinating because when you think about the panel that we have here, we all have very different sections of, in essence, the buyer journey that we'd be involved with at different times. And Lance, I think you coming from the paid acquisition space, I think this is definitely an area where there's been just so much shuffle that's happening. So being almost at the top of the funnel in regards to this stuff, I mean, how are you viewing the current shifts, and like, what are you seeing in regards to the pipeline changes for companies?
Yeah, I think it's in line with what Michael and Josh have talked about, and it's fascinating because they're kind of filling in the blanks for me a little bit in terms of the why behind some of the shift we're seeing on the media side. And what we're seeing is that, yeah, activity is flat to up, and traffic and lead volume is flat to up, but we're seeing some hesitation on the actual willingness to pull the trigger and make the purchase. And so we're seeing down funnel conversion metrics start to level off or even decline a little bit, just as a result of that natural fear and hesitation and uncertainty in the market. And as I said earlier, and the other panelists have talked about, it's not spread evenly across all verticals by any means. And so overall, yeah, we're seeing a pullback in spending and ad spending, as you would expect. And it's hard to tell how much and how fast, but what we're seeing is that it's really split. There are those that are kind of knee-jerk pulling everything and hitting pause across the board, and they're going from 100 to 0. And then there are others who are kind of standing pat for now, playing wait and see a little bit. And then in the third camp are those that are kind of the beneficiaries of some of this change, and they're hitting the gas, and they're using this as an opportunity to grow. So we've got a client who's a streaming company, whole lot of streaming going on at home right now. They're going through the roof, right? We've got an e-learning provider as well, a platform that my kids use. It's fun, unexpected outcome. Then we have another one who's an ISP. They're asking us to hold off right now while they absorb all the demand that is just coming in organically, right? So they're in the complete opposite position of those being negatively impacted. They're like, we're going to get back to growth here as soon as we can accommodate it, but hold on and let us just absorb all of this demand real quick before we start ramping things up with paid channels. So we're seeing differences across verticals, but in general, from the buyer mindset, a fair amount of hesitation, and I'm curious to see how long that persists.
It's very fascinating is, I think the one thing that everybody just said, which is really, really spot on, is that there's winners, and then there's definitely losers, and there's people that are stuck in the middle. And our team was very fortunate that we started looking at this 8 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. We started designing what would be the winners and losers. I think some people on this webinar have definitely read my "Hand me a Corona, I'm gonna need it" post that I put out there. And there's definitely a huge amount of winners, right? And there's at the same amount of time a huge amount of losers. And I think natural ones that we could point out to say that are really struggling, and I know that we've seen this, is of course restaurant, hospitality, travel, leisure, hotels. But there's slivers inside of there that are a little bit different. If you're in the cruise lines industry, like I feel really bad, and it's really, really hard. But there's definitely people that are booming right now. Josh, when you kind of think about, when you look out onto even your client portfolio or people that you've talked to, what are some of those businesses that people should probably be trying to focus to generate pipeline?
Yeah, it's a really great question, because you're right. It is a split, and it's this interesting sociology that happens when everyone's kind of stuck at home and what they do. And so, e-learning is clearly a huge lift, right? When schools stop on a dime across the United States and the world, well, no one's really prepared to handle that. Like very few school and stuff like that have figured out how to do e-learning. So they're all trying to figure it out, all looking for things like that. Streaming is huge, as Lance mentioned earlier. We have a few customers in media and TV streaming, and through the roof, like overnight, right? All these new shows, all these new opportunities they have to go. And so those types of things we've seen go up. Gaming also is another area where people are spending at home. So they want to do gaming. They want to play games. They want to play games with their friends and do some social interactions. These are people that aren't typically gamers, maybe, right? Well, I guess I'm stuck at home. My kids are stuck at home. Man, is there a game out there for them to keep them, entertained for a little bit? So I think we see a lot of those types of things. And even in the finance world, where the consumer finance, there's an interesting byproduct of this pandemic is the market's tanked, right? Economies have really been shaken. And so governments have done a lot to mitigate how bad that will be, including the Fed dropping interest rates exceptionally low to essentially zero. And that has now boomed borrowing. And so now people are home and now they're looking, well, man, maybe it's a good time to, do a refi, or maybe it's a good time to get a personal loan or pay or do something else. Well, borrowing has now become cheaper again, where in the last few years it's actually become more expensive. So you're seeing this uptick in some areas, some derivatives of some other areas. And it's just really interesting to see that. So I would say maybe those, e-learning, gaming, streaming, finance, those are areas where I think people are actually seeing an uptick in demand, an uptick in usage and interest.
What about you, Michael? Like, I mean, I think I would agree with almost all those. I think financial services is something I've talked a lot about. We unfortunately had a client that was very well known in the financial services space, and everything stopped, right? So I think there's a wide space in finance. I think there's certain people that win, there's certain people that lose. But what are you seeing? I mean, obviously with direct mail being a huge component of some of these companies, I know you don't do the exact as like a big mail house maybe, but it's very similar.
Yeah, it is very similar. And I think there's an interesting corollary to everybody being at home right now. Is what we're seeing is people who are sort of savvy with the channel are actually leaning in a little bit more because they know they've got a receptive audience. I won't speak for everyone else here, but it's, going out and getting the mail is actually kind of interesting because I leave the house and go do something.
Right.
Right. And so we've seen in some cases where there's volume that actually goes up as a result of that. And it is definitely very industry specific. Retail has gone down, food delivery, really good example, off the charts. That's been a big growth in direct mail. The other interesting area that we're seeing, which probably isn't surprising, is actually in the health insurance industry. Insurers are facing a need to communicate a lot more with their customers. They've got new things they need to communicate. In a lot of cases, they want people to go through telemedicine steps first before actually coming to a clinic or getting diagnosed. And so we've seen a big spike in people who are interested in either increasing the volume or increasing the efficiency of the mail that they're sending. So, obviously direct mail we think of as marketing mail mostly, but it's also it's a pretty broad customer communication channel. And in a lot of cases, there are communications that might not necessarily fall within the realms of like a customer acquisition mission that we're seeing jump as well.
Interesting. Lance, where are you seeing the biggest amount of people that are doubling down? You had talked a little bit about the e-learning space. I mean, is that one of the biggest areas that you see winners?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, certainly the couple in our client base that are in that space are doubling down big. I talked about streaming. Our ISP client is just going insane right now. Oddly, we have a credit card processing company that deals primarily with retail clients, and you'd think that would just be a bloodbath, right? That'd be a horrible spot to be in right now. But oddly, some retailers are taking this opportunity because there's a law coming down that they're going to have to replace all their point of sale terminals to have their hardware upgraded to align with new standards, and they're taking the opportunity to do that. So they're using this window of time. Some of them who perceive that they're going to be around, obviously, and survive this, to go ahead and upgrade their point of sale terminals now. This company also got really smart and got involved with the SBA, and they're actually a funding delivery vehicle for some of the loan assistance programs as well. So they turned on a dime, updated their messaging, made some product changes, partnered with the government, and surprisingly, they're doing really well. I see opportunities to innovate for those that are willing and able to really move quickly. And not every company can do that, but those that can, there are opportunities out there.
Yeah, definitely a lot of companies can't move really quick, and I find it really fascinating to see some of these companies that really can't pivot. I mean, of course, like a lot of this is around, hey, let's resurrect our pipeline and let's make sure that we try to capture as much as we can. But one of the things that I think that's really interesting, and Michael, we were talking about this a little bit earlier over the emails and stuff like that, is that you obviously need to resurrect your pipeline from net new, but you of course have to retain customers as well. And sometimes that pipeline is best generated by retaining your current customers or even getting them to buy more from you. I mean, what are your thoughts in regards to not just generating net new pipeline, adding new logos, but maybe making more pipeline out of the current logos you have?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think retention's going to be a really clear focus. I think both for B2C and B2B marketers in the short term. You know, for those of us in the B2B space, we know that budgets are going to be cut, and you know, every head of every department is looking at their software expenditures right now and kind of figuring out where the line is and what's essential and above the line and what's below the line. And I think everyone knows that calculation's going on. And so this is an incredible opportunity to make sure that your customers are happy, that they feel value, that they're getting value out of your product, that your product is going to be especially helpful in the coming months, and just sort of driving that engagement. The other behavior that I've seen some in the B2B space is companies looking to pull forward renewals, sometimes like with a special offer. Just going out and having those conversations maybe a month, 2, 3 months early and say, hey, you know, we value continuity, you value continuity. I know you're getting value from our product and from our service. Let's have a discussion about securing that right now so that we can work together moving forward and limit, you know, some of that churn or uncertainty in the relationship. And I think that's a really smart thing to do. On the consumer side, it's a similar calculus, but it's about sort of really making sure that you're driving brand affinity and loyalty. Consumers are going to be much more particular about how they spend money, especially with uncertainty in the economy. And if you're a valued brand or not with them is going to make a big difference. And I think there's an opportunity to really invest in not just kind of transactional marketing where, you know, we're promoting something or offering a discount, but really sort of helping them experience the brand and remembering what they like about your business and about your brand is something that's going to help drive loyalty at a point in time. Even if it's going to, you know, even if you're seeing sort of a shortage in pipeline and initial demand, as that comes back around, people are going to want to go back to their favorite brands. They're going to want to re-engage. They're going to want to use the products that they like. And this is a really good opportunity for marketers to build that affinity.
Yeah, it's a great call. You know, as you were talking, you reminded me of some ad creative I had seen recently, not from a client of ours, but from a brand that I like. And if you had told me a month ago that I would see a banner ad for this brand that would almost bring me to tears, I would have said, no, that's not how this works, right? I apologize, of course, the landscapers are here now. But it's like torture. But so I'm online and, you know, just going about my day and I see this ad, you know, you might be able to tell the bike jersey behind me, I'm a cyclist. I see an ad from Specialized Bicycles, but they're not saying, here's our awesome, sweet new bike or wheels or components, whatever. The big headline on the ad was support your small businesses, right? They were not talking about themselves. They're talking about small businesses and they're talking obviously, you know, about small bike shops. And, you know, we all have a soft spot for our local bike shop, but to see that brand clearly putting money down and not selling themselves, but trying to keep everyone mindful of supporting their local bike shop, I thought was really touching and it stuck with me. And to your point, it evokes so much emotion in me that I was like, you're damn right. When I can get back out on my bike again, I'm going to want to get back out on a Specialized. When I go buy a new bike, I'm going to want to buy a Specialized, and I'm going to buy the helmet and the wheels, the whole deal. And it just struck me as being so attuned to the times and selfless and authentic, but in a way that God just made me love the brand. So I want to bring forth that example because it struck me, even as an old jaded marketing and advertising guy, I'm still prone to some of this sometimes, I guess. Yeah, that's right. Started weeping about my bikes.
I would totally agree. I think the empathy and the ability to be able to show that you want to support and care for other people in this challenging time is something that's going to build a lot of that affinity with a brand, and as well as retain customers. And I think sometimes I just watched the Reforge webinars a couple of days ago with Patrick from Profitwell, and you can of course see a huge drop in subscriptions for B2C. And I think B2B is usually B2C is the leading indicator when B2B is eventually going to lose some revenue. But you can really start to see a lot of companies kind of stick it out a little bit longer because they are focused on doing the right thing compared to saying, just buy my stuff today. I think one interesting, I mean, Josh, you of course see a slew of type of marketing messages, and you said that a lot more messages are going out. There's a whole bunch more volume. When you see that messaging, I don't know how much you get to actually view these types of messages, but are these more of, hey, like, buy our stuff? Are these, hey, trying to keep people engaged? Are they things like Lance is talking about where it's like, we want to help and do the best that we can support? What kind of messaging are you seeing resonate?
It's a big mix, but I think everyone has a common theme of empathy, right? So I think no one is going out there, at least not what I've seen. And of course, I don't see all the messages our customers do, but we do see quite a few, and I'm on a lot of their lists as well, and what they do and what they talk to us about. No one's going out there and being too, bombastic and almost like a little bit clueless, right? Everyone's having empathy in it. And with the empathy, it's like, here's some valuable information for you that we can provide. And so it's not the heavy sell, it's more of the, hey, here's some information that could be helpful for you. So for instance, we work with a company that they essentially own a lot of malls around the world. And so malls are shut. Well, what do you do when malls are shut? You can't necessarily get people to go to the mall. And so they've changed their messaging to, pickup and deliveries from their restaurants that are at the malls that are still open. And so it's a really cool way of doing that. They could have gone dark, but they said, you know what, this is temporary. We're going to be fine. But how do we make the best of this situation? And so I think those are some examples of people are adjusting their message, but still trying to provide value with the products they can actually give to their consumers with that empathetic lens.
Is it one of the things that, Josh, with your tools, a lot of it is, of course, is the first party data. You know a lot about somebody's customers and you can consume that. How is that data so much more important now? Like, how are people leveraging that? How should be people thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, first party data really comes in the spotlight if it hasn't already been there for people, because, going out and acquiring brand new customers is important for every business, but it's also hard, right? And you just don't know enough about the customer. So you do a lot of trial and error and testing. So you rip through budgets in that. But if you can use your first party data to actually do a couple things. One, your first party data has a lot of signals to use. And when you use AI to kind of uncover those signals, you can figure out, this cohort of people with these types of similarities are really good people to go after. And that can actually inform your acquisition strategies. In addition, people are on a cycle to repeat purchase. And some of those, depending on the products, some of those repeat purchases may be, years apart, and some may be just a few months apart. So how do you encourage them to do that? And that's generally also using AI, right? Well, who's in the market right now? What's the right message to send to them right now? When's the right time to send it to them? And where's the best channel? Are they more of a mobile app kind of customer? Or are they more about, email, or do they like getting direct mail, or what is it? And when you put those things in succession, you see a real benefit from your first party data in both reconversions or repeat business, as well as allow you to go acquire new customers based on really good data from your current first party customers. So I think people that they can really use their first party data to really both enhance their pipeline or generate more demand, as well as to get repeat business from their current customers.
Michael, I mean, when we think about all of these different things that we know about our customers and way that we can engage them, I mean, one of the things that we're focused on here is how do we create engagement which will resonate with somebody, but get them to basically feel better about their day or have some sort of ease they can have. And I think some of us have kids that are at home. I mean, I have my 3 boys, and one of the things I'm struggling with is like, what do I do with these guys all day long? I have 3 young boys that just beat the crap out of each other. And they're busy. But when I think about like services like yourself, where I can actually make a physical impact compared to, typically I'm focused just on digital, I mean, how are you leveraging or seeing people leverage that data that maybe is being used in something like a Blueshift to be able to make a physical impact in somebody's world? Like you said earlier, going out to the mailbox is like the highlight of the day almost, because it gets you out of the house. I'm a little bit, my mailbox is in my door, so like I don't even get to leave the house. So like, how do you see that working with the physical world?
No, I think that's a great question. And there's an interesting parallel there, because the other channel, interestingly enough, that has suffered a bit, you know, we talk about sort of reductions in digital spend naturally, but there's also been kind of a pullback in out-of-home spend, right? I mean, if you think about it, as a brand, you know, spending money on a billboard above a freeway that nobody's driving on is not a really great use of marketing dollars right now. And so direct mail is actually an interesting one. As I said, in a lot of cases, we've seen volume go up because it does two things. I mean, one, it's another channel outside of digital to reach customers, and knowing that, you know, in the B2B world, sort of the face-to-face events are kind of not happening anytime right now. And again, in the B2C world, there are certain channels that aren't going to be terribly effective either, including sort of experiential marketing. You know, so direct mail is definitely a way to take some elements from some of those channels and bring it into the home. You know, as far as first-party data goes, I think that's something that's maybe a little unique about what we do at Lob, is we really allow our customers to take first-party data and extend it out to the channel. And the way we do that is just through personalized creative. So if you think about the same way, you're going to tailor perhaps the imagery that you use in an email, or the products that you're going to feature based on, you know, either customer demographics or purchase history. We actually allow you to take that same level of personalization out into the direct mail piece. So you imagine you could have a set of meal recommendations for a home delivery service, knowing like what type of food that customer has purchased before. That's a really great way to sort of build affinity with a customer through the direct mail channel, or even just demographics, right? If you know something about them, you know, like say you're in the insurance industry, and you happen to know that this particular prospective customer is a dog owner. Great opportunity to feature a picture of someone with their pet on the creative, and again, sort of draw that awareness and affinity to the offer. So we've seen some customers that are really creative in the way that they customize the mail pieces that they're sending out based on that type of data.
While you were talking, you gave me a great idea. I've been talking with Lance about like what we're trying to do to like cut through the noise with executives, and I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of our coloring book. We created a coloring book so that way we could send to people like Josh and like, hey, color this in, give it to your kid. Like they can make a paper airplane kit. But I think what I think would be really, really interesting is to send those out via Lob on your basically large postcard size, and send it directly to somebody's house and allow them to then color on it themselves, because I don't think I've ever colored more in my entire life. And I think those unique ways that you can engage with customers or even prospects is really the way that it's going to be the way that you're successful. And I think one of the attendees, Amanda, had shared an article in here about McKinsey talking about companies that really do a good job right now are the ones that are most successful. When you think about all this first-party data, Lance, I mean, from a paid acquisition perspective, of course, a lot of times we're trying to, whether it is Google Ads or Facebook, we're trying to attract people. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of cases, we have all this wonderful data about our current customers, even people that are our prospects, and we can use that for audience retargeting, and we can target them in base, whether they have kids, whether they have a dog. I mean, I know you and I both just got puppies. I don't know if that data is on the internet yet, but somebody I know somewhere knows that I have a puppy. Facebook probably does. How do we take that first party data that we know demographic wise and then reuse that in some of these paid acquisition channels, which are so much cheaper now? I mean, the cost per click has just basically tanked over the past couple of months.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, we think about creating multiple audience targets and audience cohorts, and you know, what Michael was talking about in terms of, you know, having some of those renewal conversations earlier really resonated with me, and we're seeing some clients take advantage of that, and they're making special offers, right? So in addition to having that renewal conversation sooner, they're actually incentivizing, you know, with lower rates, right? You know, hey, renew now, and we'll lock you in at 30% below what you otherwise might have been in line for, right? And we can target a cohort. We can say, all right, we're going to target ads at the people who we know are coming up for renewal 2 months from now, right? And we can do that on a rolling basis, and we can test and see what resonates, and that can just become part of our ongoing strategy now over time as we see what works, right? And contributes to higher retention rates and LTVs. So we segment audiences in a lot of different ways. It can be around, renewals. It can be, those that exhibit high risk of churn based off of, low engagement rates in the app potentially. So we'll slice and dice audiences on all kinds of different ways and customize messaging in order to get people to re-engage, hopefully, with the app or the platform. There's a lot of room for creativity, and that's in strategy, and that's what we really enjoy helping our clients figure out. And it's somewhat unexpected. I think our space is viewed as being very analytical and rigid and linear sometimes, but there's actually room for a lot of strategy and creativity. That's where we.
One thing that I've seen a lot happen, and we do a lot of work with a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of B2B SaaS. And of course, a huge focus of our business is to help companies pick and choose tools to help them either make money or save money. And there was a statistic that came out from ProfitWell that was talking about people, if you would have asked them a year ago in March, basically, if they're going to choose a tool, it needed to make them more money. But now people are saying, well, that tool needs to save me money. So I think the value prop has definitely kind of changed for the typical buyer out there. I know as this pandemic has started and stuff like that, I mean, we saw some very, very large deals fall out of our pipeline. And they're like, hey, we'll talk in Q4. And I know for our business, and I was just in an online learning panel last week, talking about how do you need to change the service offering you have to resurrect that pipeline. I mean, you lose a six-figure deal, or if you lose 3 six-figure deals, like that's a big deal. And sometimes you have to change your service offering. Have any of you seen any unique cases, or are you currently looking at, hey, we can't sell this extremely expensive thing right now. I can't sell the Louis Vuitton bag because nobody wants to buy it today. But we know if we just sell the handle, or as somebody told me, car parts. Cars aren't selling, but car parts are. What are you guys seeing difference about the service offerings to get people back in the pipeline? Josh, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting. I think the greatest analogy I heard was be a willow, not an oak, referring to trees. And oak trees are very sturdy and rigid, and perceived to be really strong. But when a hurricane comes or something, they actually break because they don't bend in the wind. Where willow trees are maybe perceived to be weak on the outside, but actually have a lot of flexibility. And so as adversity comes, they bend to the adversity, and that allows them actually to survive. And so I think all companies really need to be willows, not oaks now, and throw out kind of maybe, a month or two ago, your strategy that you had going in, and maybe your playbooks you had going in, and this is where we're going to toe the line, and we're not doing this and this, because that's oak thinking. And generally speaking, you're gonna break hard. Because people are getting hit in a variety of ways. All companies are looking at expenses, and so be a willow, not an oak. Be flexible, be accommodating, have empathy, and that's how you win loyalty, right? Our company, Lob, I'm sure Closed Loop, your company, Dan. All of us want to make sure we don't have clients, we have customers, we have partners. We want to work with them long term. We want to be successful with them long term. It's not about getting someone to sign the dotted line and close a deal. It's about making them successful for, years and years to come. And you don't do that by trying to be super rigid at the beginning. You want to be flexible, especially in the environment that we have today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I love that analogy too. That's a great analogy. That's going to be like the key takeaway from today for me. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that is a great line. That really resonates with me too. And I think maybe an extension of that mindset for a lot of clients that we're having to help them understand is that, you may be a single product company, and I'm sorry, but no one's going to buy your product for the next 2 months. And one company, they sell security systems for commercial environments. There's just not going to be a lot of demand for that in the next 2 months. I mean, there'll be some, and we want to help them go after it, but many people are just not going to be receptive to that message, right? But if they can reach out and be helpful and be seen as having helped them through this time in the way that Dan is trying to do with the coloring book and some of the other examples that have been talked about here, they, I think, can help their cause and position themselves to be able to really rebound quickly for when that demand does snap back, because I do anticipate, that there will be a snap back at some point. And it's an opportunity for companies to put themselves in position now to be able to ride that wave and really accelerate their growth when things do come back online. But yeah, some companies have the option of pivoting and being nimble with their product offering. Some just don't. Many of our clients just don't have that option. And so we're trying to help them, I think, accept that and say, okay, you can't have sales. I'm sorry, you can't have revenue for the next month or two, realistically, but you can position yourself to grow a lot more rapidly than you otherwise would 2 months onward. It is kind of the rough message in some cases.
I think you bring on a really good point of there's certain people that are going to be able to do sales now. We've talked about some of those. You got streaming, you've got gaming, you got some of these financial service spaces. And then you have people that might not be able to do sales for a couple months, right? You talk about the security company, commercial space. We work with a digital display company where they have to completely change market. And I've seen a lot of companies change markets or change their service offerings. Michael, when you think about over the next year as an example, right, inside of what you see from people delivering outwards, I would make an assumption that there's pretty different horizons for different types of business. As an example, restaurants, the horizon 3 to 6 months, like we don't really know. Airlines, we're not really sure what that's going to look like. What are some of the other horizons that you think are out there when you think about different types of businesses that may come online in 2 weeks to 2 months to 2 years?
Yeah, so I think it's a really great question, and I think it's probably a difficult one, just knowing that it's going to be kind of a rolling cycle as stuff starts to ramp back up, and we still don't always have a timeline to when this is going to happen. So, I think probably you're going to see restaurants and retail might be the first ones kind of starting to come back online. Travel's probably going to have a little bit of a longer window. And there's also just some broader areas. We talk, Josh, I'll second my kudos for the analogy. I think it's a good one. And I think some businesses that have pivoted are going to stay that way. I think you're going to see business models that change as well as a result of this. There may be restaurants that become really, really good at food delivery businesses and stay that way. There may be some folks in the hospitality industry that have pivoted into helping, say, the healthcare sector that might stay there. I mean, there's an opportunity for businesses not just to make some short-term, stop the bleeding kind of changes, but really sort of evolve their business model. So I think in a lot of cases like this, we're going to see some things that are unexpected in different industries, and we're going to see some changes. And a lot of them, I think, in the longer term will be beneficial. I mean, if I give an example to some of what we're doing at Lob, like we know there are certain industries that are not going to be advertising as much and sending as much mail. But we also know there are other industries that are going to be really interesting opportunities. So one of the things that we've been working on internally is, as a result of all of the, both at the federal government level and the state government level, all of these different sort of stimulus levers that are being pulled, there's now a need for a bunch of different government and financial institutions to get money in the hands of consumers. And we, by the way, in addition, don't just do letters and postcards, we allow businesses to send checks. So we've started having conversations with a lot of the regional banks that are going to be fulfilling these small loan programs and say, hey, we can actually help you get checks out to your customers faster and in a more cost-effective way than you're doing that now. It's a very, very small part of our business, but one we actually expect to grow as a result of some of these changes.
One of the things that's interesting is as we think about pipeline, I think one of the things I was reading a study of from a couple of different companies, HubSpot and SAP, in regards to ultimately a lot more volume is happening, but there's a lot less demand coming in. So a lot more of what you were saying earlier, Josh. When we think about trying to add new companies or new logos, I think the simple thing that many companies is you got PPC, you got outbound prospecting, you have different types of channels. I mean, what are some of the things that anybody here is seeing being really, really successful from acquiring new customers? Is it outbound? Is it, I mean, Josh, I mean, what are your kind of perspectives in regards to what's helping people attract new customers that are paying today?
Yeah, I don't think there's a silver bullet, so to speak. I think everyone's trying to adapt to this new environment and trying to figure out how to approach it. Outbound is an interesting strategy if you can, be empathetic to the outbound. You don't want to start doing outbound to industries that are literally treading water and trying to survive. The last thing in their mind is going to be getting a new platform or a new vendor. And so you have to be a little bit cautious of those. But again, on the flip side, there's industries that are really seeing a lot of boom, and they're like, how do we handle this traffic? And we were joking that, some of these companies that may be using smaller, vendors that are focused on smaller businesses and smaller volumes, and all of a sudden they have a huge increase in volume, and now they're like, oh my gosh, I can't send anything. It's just breaking. It's not meant for that. And they're probably stuck, and they're probably very aggressively looking for, how do we fix this? Because my goodness, look at this windfall we have right now, and how long is that going to be? I think on the other side, it is really about creating value with what you have. The low cost marketing channels always are good, and I think all B2B companies have a pretty healthy contact records of either previous opportunities, current customers, or things that have come in through different lead flows. How do you make sure you don't forget about those people and provide them real value at this time? Provide them real value, and don't make them pay for it. Don't make them go through hoops to get it. Just provide them the value and help, give them something without actually anything in return. And I think that's a different paradigm that a lot of B2B companies and even B2C companies tend not to do. I think, Lance, you said it great with that specialized example before, but just give some value without any thought in return. And people remember that. And I think people are anxious and interested in learning at this time and becoming better. And so if you can provide them ways in which they can become better at their craft, at their industry, and don't put them on a hook for it, just give it to them and be very open about it. I think you've earned a little bit more longer term value with them when they may be in the market for something like what you're offering, which may not be for a year or so. But I think now is the time to really provide great value and share that through different communication means.
Yeah, I would second that. And I mean, we're seeing much more success, as I know you are, Dan, with promoting webinars and educational materials for clients. A lot of our clients are turning more heavily to that, and it's really resonating clearly. In terms of the messaging, we've talked about this, Dan, and I mean, cost savings messages are resonating suddenly much better than growth-oriented messaging, right? So that's a sudden shift, because a month ago even, it was all about growth, and now it's more about, oh no, save money, right? I don't want to spend $1 to make 2 anymore. Help me spend 50 cents instead of this dollar, right? Because I want to save as much and conserve as much cash as I can. So updating the value prop in some cases can be really helpful, but I think, this core point of being empathetic to where people are and being authentic, I'm really encouraged by how quickly that's been embraced by so many companies. And my hope is that actually persists. I would love to see less overt buy now messaging moving forward, right? I would love to see companies use this as an opportunity to actually kind of get in touch with their core brand values again and think about ways that they can actually add value to their customers' lives, and for that to carry on. Maybe that's a silver lining from all of this. Maybe I'm naive here. Maybe I'm Pollyanna. I don't know. But I would really like to think that could be a positive outcome, is that people see the nuance and the good that can come from being a little more thoughtful in their messaging approaches.
Of course. I mean, I think it's spot on where companies need to really focus on that messaging and focus on that stuff. And for all the attendees that are here, please feel free to pose any additional questions. I definitely want to be able to answer any of the questions that we have from the folks out there. Now, I know that, of course, some people here are more focused on the marketing side, some are more focused on the business side, but one of the interesting things that I've been doing a lot of research on is basically the different types of companies that succeed in these times of turbulence, as you might call it. I don't really like using the word crisis. I feel like the crisis is somewhat behind us. I feel like the turbulence is ultimately what's happening now. But when we see companies that like invest here or double down here, I think you can have, somebody had shared a McKinsey article earlier that basically said the companies that double down here are the ones that end up being more successful in the future. I think it could be very hard to double down, especially if your company culture is, and I'll pick on Salesforce a little bit here, sell, right? And 6% more per year. How do you, and I think Michael asked this question to you first, how do you take doubling down in this type of situation where you have to be so much more cautious with the type of messaging you have without pushing sales reps or even marketers to throw that buy now button out there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, you know, I think Josh articulated it nicely, and Lance did as well. It's really about value. If you're reaching out and providing value and without really attaching strings to it, I think then it's reasonable to reach out. But I think brands should also be thoughtful about what it is they think they're providing that's value. Because I think I, like everyone else here, probably gets a lot of commercial emails on a daily basis. And I've seen some good ones of companies. I've seen a lot of content-led strategies that I think are really good, where companies are providing content and learning, like how to think about this, how to, best practices for taking your events virtual, the kinds of things that people are struggling with, and providing that type of content, I think can be really meaningful and valuable, and especially if it's done in a way that doesn't feel transactional. On the other hand, I received messages where it's kind of a hard sales pitch that's very tangentially related to, something that's coronavirus related, and that's just kind of grating and irritating. So, you'd be careful. My advice would be, think about what you have to offer that's potentially valuable to customers, and how you can share it with them in a way that doesn't feel, super transactional or obligating. And, that's the type of thing that builds the brand equity, that builds the affinity, that when people are ready to come back and make a purchase decision, you're going to be top of mind.
Now, we have about 5 minutes left in here, and I think one thing I love to do at the end of these is not only do we get the opportunity to share some of the things that we are seeing happening between our own businesses or as well as our clients, but we all just had a great opportunity to have some inspiration and ideas that we got from each other. And I know there's multiple ideas that I'm leaving this panel with now that I'm excited to leave here and go do those. And what I'd love to have everybody do here is talk just about 1 minute of something that they learned in this webinar that they feel is something they can use in their business to go create impact. And I'd love to kick it off with Josh, if you're open to sharing something that you've learned just out of this panel that you thought was inspiring, that you might actually be able to use that as a tactic or strategy for what you're going to do.
Yeah, no, I loved it. And thank you to Lance and Michael. This has been really great, as well as to you, Dan, and everyone for attending. I really liked what Lance just said recently, how people are changing their mindset from growth to preserve, but they still want to do it. And so on paid media, we offer a paid media thing for audience targeting, where you can take your first party data and push it to Facebook and Google and Bing and such, and use that with AI insights. And that's an interesting concept of, usually we focus on, hey, here are the people that are most likely to purchase. And maybe the flip side is, who are most likely to not purchase, stop spending money on them, you know, and versus the opposite. And so I really like what Lance was saying there. I think that piqued my interest a little bit about maybe how we position that in this time versus not about maybe, you know, who's likely to purchase, like who's not likely to purchase, who are you wasting money on, and how do you stop doing that? Because preservation of cash has become to the forefront versus maybe growth right now. And I really like that thing. So I'll take that away from this.
What about you, Lance? What's one of the big things that you're taking away from this?
Well, you know, thank you, Josh, and thank you, Michael, and to you, Dan, for this. It's been just a fascinating and enjoyable discussion, and definitely the high point of my week here. So thanks, guys. As I said, you guys have filled in some blanks for me in terms of the overall user behavior and user psychology picture. That's just invaluable for me. So I'm going to be chewing on that a lot. And this idea of kind of this, you know, we've talked about what kind of recovery we're going to have in the economy at large, and is it U-shaped and V-shaped? And the idea that there's a user behavior pattern that could be U-shaped really resonated for me, Josh. I appreciate that. And Michael, just the concept that, you know, there are these other channels, and, you know, as a digital guy, you know, I'll admit direct mail doesn't get a lot of love in our world quite often, but what a cool, creative way to get in front of someone, especially right now at home, where you're right. I mean, going to the mail is another high point of the day, right? What a fantastic opportunity we have to leverage that medium. So I'm going to be brainstorming on that too.
I love it. I so am jealous of the mailbox now because I never get out of my house ever. I've been working remote for years, and like my mailbox is literally attached to my door, and I'm so jealous because I got excited to go get takeout last night. My wife was like, "This is lame." Michael, what is your big takeaway from this all? And I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll second what everyone else has said. You know, really enjoyed the conversation today, and I think it's been really insightful. I think the one thing that kind of resonated with me that I want to think about how we sort of work into the way that just kind of our content strategy and the way we do some messaging is, you know, Lance, you talked about how there are some businesses right now that, you know, in the short term, like revenue is not going to be a thing. It isn't. And to help those types of businesses and those brands really think through, like, does that mean we stop doing everything, or how do we communicate and engage in a way that's thoughtful and sets us up for long-term success? And I think they're definitely, you know, folks who are customers of ours, more broadly, that we could have those conversations with, and help them understand sort of ways to get value from the campaigns and the communications that they're doing today, even if it's not around driving sort of immediate revenue.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate all of you taking the time, Lance. Always great to be able to get a bunch of people together with you. Josh, thanks for taking the time out of your afternoon. And Michael, thanks for all the insights as well. Everybody, thanks for coming out. We'll send out a copy of the recording for you all, and then we'll look forward to chatting with you soon. But everybody, try to stay safe, wash your hands, and don't touch your face. Bye, guys.
You're an old MC.
All right, thanks so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.